Hello everyone and welcome to today's edition of Horizon Live. My guest this evening is Congressman Adam Schiff, who represents Californians in the 28th Congressional District. He will be talking about important issues dealing with Karabakh, the Armenian genocide, and of course the 2016 election. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back, everyone. Again, my guest this evening in the studio is Congressman Adam Schiff, a familiar face to our program. Welcome, Congressman.
Thank you. Great to join you.
It's been a while.
It has.
Well, thank you for joining us. I want to start by talking about a very important issue, which is the escalation of the military activities in Nagorno-Karabakh around the border. A couple of weeks ago, there was a hearing held, albeit closed door, with the U.S. co-chairman of the OSCE Minsk Group, James Warlick. Can you give me some idea of what was discussed there? Because there has been a push to address some of the inconsistencies, and the Minsk Group and the State Department have approved some provisions on that issue.
Well, I think many of the members of Congress, myself included, have been concerned that the ambassador has adopted a policy of relativity, moral relativity, in the sense, or relativism that says, well, we call on both sides to refrain from violence, both sides need to do X or Y, when the reality is that Azerbaijan has been the belligerent party here. I wrote to the ambassador back in September of last year, raising my concern with this policy of equivalence, because the actions are not at all equivalent. You have Azerbaijan that's firing tank fire and artillery, using snipers to kill soldiers in Nagorno-Karabakh across the line of contact. And I think what's happening here, and it's very dangerous, is as you see domestic discontent rise in Azerbaijan, as you see the economy struggle, and certainly the lower oil prices have not helped to prop up that dictatorship, then Aliyev is doing what a lot of dictators do, which is cracking down on dissent, and in the case of the line of contact, sparking a fight with a neighbor to distract from the domestic problems. So this is very dangerous, and I think that it's important that our ambassadors speak out quite directly about this, because by tweeting photos of artillery shells and saying, isn't this terrible, but not saying where they came from, I think it encourages Azerbaijan. If they know that the most we're going to do is call on both sides to refrain from violence, that's essentially a green light for continued dangerous, provocative, and deadly action by Nagorno-Karabakh. So the ambassador has been hearing from us about that. I think members of Congress also wanted to share with the ambassador the imperative of having monitoring equipment along the line of contact to monitor for violations. And not surprisingly, that's something that Nagorno-Karabakh and Armenia have agreed to. Azerbaijan has resisted. That ought to tell the world a lot about who's the provocateur here.
Mm-hmm. And as far as this was an interesting and unprecedented step to have a hearing of this caliber in Congress, what would be the next steps on this issue as far as Congress is concerned?
Well, I think we need to keep up the pressure on the administration and on the ambassador and our allies to insist that this monitoring equipment go up and to turn up the heat on Azerbaijan to end these dangerous, indeed murderous actions along the line of contact. This could easily get out of control. And, for good reason, we're very focused on the threat posed by ISIS and what Russia is doing and what China is doing. But you take your eye off of this very hot conflict, and all of a sudden it burns out of control. And so now is the time really to intervene to make sure that Azerbaijan ends these provocative and dangerous acts, that we return to a process to bring about a peaceful resolution to this challenging issue.
Yet last week you did a letter to Secretary of State Kerry regarding the anti-Karabakh matters at the Parliamentary Assembly of Council of Europe. What is the state? What do you feel the State Department's position is on this matter?
Well, I spoke with a top State Department official, one of our ambassadors to the region, about this, to raise my concern with this very pro-Azeri, Azeri narrative resolution before the Parliamentary Assembly and the Council of Europe, and to express my strong opposition to it, to urge that we do everything possible. Both the ambassador and Victoria Nuland were working against this. And I think they thought it was going to be a tough struggle. And frankly, I'm thrilled that it was defeated. At the same time, there was a second resolution dealing with water rights that was harmful, that did pass, but the most destructive was defeated. I don't think it's the last of these kind of motions we're going to see in the Parliamentary Assembly, and we're just going to have to continue to mobilize against them. Part of it not only had a narrative that was the Azeri narrative, but also wanted to change the composition of the group that would work on resolving the issues in the region that would stack the deck in favor of Azerbaijan. Very important that it was defeated. It wouldn't have had operative impact. I mean, we would not have gone along with it. The Minsk group would have continued to operate. And frankly, the Minsk group is tough enough as it is. But nonetheless, we need to continue to fight against these resolutions. I participated, I guess a year or two ago, in a OSCE Minsk Parliamentary Assembly that was actually in Baku, and was one of the voting members of our delegation, and was very proud to vote for a couple of resolutions sponsored by Armenia that were critical of Azerbaijan and condemning of the belligerence of Azerbaijan. So it was a wonderful opportunity for me, not just to advocate for our representatives, but to be one of our representatives in one of those bodies.
Let's stay in that region. Since last time we spoke, things have changed with Iran, with the sanctions being lifted. And in fact, just today there was a U.S. posturing that the U.S. would not be opposed to Armenia and Iran pursuing closer ties and relations. How do you feel Iran will fit into this discussion, but also with Armenia?
Well, I've always said this, Armenia lives in a very dangerous and tough neighborhood, and it has a strong economic relationship with Russia, and Russia uses that economic relationship to leverage Armenia. Armenia wants to develop a stronger economic relationship with Iran, and this is a matter of survival. It's being blockaded by Turkey and Azerbaijan. It's landlocked, and it only has so many options. So, much as I'm not wild about really any countries doing business with Iran, I can certainly understand the necessity for Armenia to have economic commerce with its neighbors and a relationship, positive relationship with its neighbors, given both its size and the size of those regional powers. So I certainly understand where Armenia is coming from, and what I would like to see, frankly, to reduce the dependence of Armenia on Russia and potential future dependence on Iran, is to see a stronger U.S.-Armenia economic relationship, a stronger trade relationship. And I've always thought that Armenia really ought to be the Silicon Valley of the Caucasus, because you can't blockade intellectual capital, and you can't blockade telecommunications, and there's a real, I think, opportunity both to develop that strength within Armenia, but also it would have the additional benefit of not having this brain drain of people leaving Armenia when they don't feel they have sufficient economic opportunity at home.
And what would it take to bring the U.S. to the next step of establishing more fruitful economic relations with Armenia?
Well, we've taken some small steps in terms of, both at the state level and the national level, with trade offices and with looking at the different tax treatment of people who are dual citizens. So those things, I think, help. Part of what we've also been working on, and this is frankly more difficult, some of what deters investment in Armenia is a concern over corruption. and whether that investment will be protected. And in order to develop a Silicon Valley of the Caucasus, you have to make sure that people can invest and feel secure in their investment. And so we need to continue, I think, to provide mutual cooperation on issues of rule of law and corruption, and try to make sure that the underpinnings are there to help economically. But I'm open to any and all ideas. And we have one of the great strengths of this country is having a diaspora from many parts of the world, and obviously we have an incredible Armenian diaspora in this country that provides great ideas for how we can solidify the relationship and grow the relationship.
Okay, we're going to come back and continue our conversation. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back, everyone. If you are just joining us, my guest this evening is Congressman Adam Schiff, certainly no stranger to our studio. Welcome back, Congressman.
Thank you, Art.
We talked about Iran and Nagorno-Karabakh and also the potential of increasing U.S. investment in Armenia, but one of the critical issues that I think is engaging everyone in the world is the whole ISIS situation. Media outlets are reporting that Turkey has been complicit in the rise of ISIS. Certainly, certain U.S. diplomats have also hinted at that. Why is it that with all of this discussion, the United States still is backing Turkey in this situation?
Well, I think the United States' priority is, as you mentioned, is combating ISIS and the horrors of ISIS. But you're absolutely right. Turkey has been an unreliable ally in that fight. Turkey left its border, I think, almost completely open for many years, which allowed foreign fighters to enter into Syria. That was the primary gateway, has been the primary gateway for foreign fighters seeking to join ISIS going through Turkey. You've had materials flow into Syria as well. You've had oil that has been under ISIS control sold in Turkey, and those smuggling routes used to ultimately financially benefit ISIS. And we in the United States, myself included, have for a long time been urging Turkey to do more, being very critical of Turkey for essentially looking the other way as a lot of radical Islamists join the fight in Syria. I think there have been some steps over time that Turkey is taking to try to stem the flow somewhat, but still not nearly enough. And so this is a grave problem. There's an additional grave problem, and that is our best ally on the ground in Syria have been the Syrian Kurds. And before the Russians came in and started bombing, the Turks said they were joining the fight against ISIS, and then what did they do? They came in and bombed the Kurds. And still, most of the Turkish bombing is of the Kurds, not of ISIS. This is true of the Russians, by the way, as well. They're not bombing the Kurds, but they're not bombing ISIS as much as they are bombing others in Syria. And this puts the U.S. in a very difficult position. We have aircraft that were flying out of the Incirlik Air Base that are contributing, our aircraft that are contributing to the fight. And so there are some things that Turkey is doing that are productive. There are many things that Turkey is doing which are very counterproductive. I would also say on the subject of Turkey that this war against the Kurds, I think, is a humanitarian catastrophe, next door to an even bigger catastrophe in Syria. And that is, I think, in an effort to boost his electoral prospects when they lost the majority in parliament, Erdogan abandoned the peace negotiations with the Kurds within Turkey and provoked a conflict with them. And sadly, that had the effect of driving people more to support his party than had in the first parliamentary elections. But now that is a genie that can't be put back in the bottle. And that conflict has just escalated. There are now hundreds of people being killed. There are grave humanitarian needs within Kurdish communities in Turkey. The government is cracking down on any form of dissent. They're arresting journalists. They've always been arresting journalists, but now they're doing it with a vengeance. What we are seeing is unfortunately, the continuing deterioration of Turkey. Turkey, which had once been hoped to be an example for a Islamic democracy, is seeing an increasingly authoritarian ruler cracking down on freedom of expression, who has, I think for political reasons, sparked a fight with the Kurds that's now out of his control. And all of that is harming our efforts to combat ISIS in Syria.
Yet it's really interesting because aside from detaining journalists and those who basically, I mean, there was a whole roundup of 26 academicians a couple of weeks ago. President Erdogan went on national TV and also praised Hitler. Yet the response from the United States was to send Vice President Biden there to, do whatever it is that he did. I'm not quite sure how those talks really ended. What will it take for the United States to be more hardline on such grave human rights violations? Because I'm saying this because it happened to us 100 years ago, and people had closed their eyes on these types of statements and actions, and then my grandparents got massacred.
Well, I don't know. I've been urging the administration to speak out more forcefully about what's going on in Turkey, what Turkey is doing vis-a-vis its neighbors, and I think we must. When you look around that region and you look at all the proxies who are warring within Syria, there's probably not a one of them that we are in complete alignment with. Now, some we're almost in complete antagonism with, like Iran. We're in mostly opposition to what Russia is doing. And Turkey is both helping in some ways and being very hurtful to the cause in others. And so I think what the administration has tried to do is to calibrate its response to each of these countries according to how much help or how much damage it's doing. But I do think that it's imperative for the administration to speak out forcefully on the human rights abuses that are going on in Turkey, to call Turkey out for the continued access foreign fighters have through Turkey into Syria, and now we're starting to see these foreign fighters come back, some through Turkey, some through Greece and other countries, to go into Europe and commit attacks in Turkey on civilians. So I think that open border policy they had, in which all comers were welcome to go after Bashar Assad, including some very bad actors, has really boomeranged on Turkey.
It's really interesting, and I get this from my readers and our viewers. The United States took such a hard line on the whole Ukraine issue, and it deemed whatever happened in Crimea as an annexation or an invasion. Yet, as you just said, bombing of the Syrian Kurds, who were the best allies we had on the ground, is being, I guess, awarded with more weapons and more access. What is the difference? I certainly don't understand the U.S. posturing on those two issues.
Well, I think probably the difference is that the United States considers Russia to be, at this point, its most dangerous adversary, given Russian military capabilities, given Putin's determination to thwart the United States at every opportunity, given the fact that Russia has demonstrated a willingness to rewrite the lines of the map in Europe through the use of military force in Georgia, in Ukraine, obviously, Moldova, elsewhere. So I think that's guiding a lot of the United States policy. In some respects, it looks like a return to the Cold War. I don't think it quite is, but nonetheless, you are seeing a growing conflict between the United States and Russia. Putin seems to view everything through the prism of a zero-sum game with the United States. Whatever helps us, hurts Russia, whatever he can do to help Russia is defined by its diminution of any American influence or power. So that may be why we view that. But I'll tell you, I have been a constant advocate within the administration that we support the Kurds, that we make sure that the Kurds have the weapons that they need to defend themselves, and they're giving sanctuary to a lot of the Christian population as well as Yazidis and fellow Muslims that are threatened by terrorists in the region. And if the Iraqi government isn't allowing weapons to get there in a timely way, then maybe we need to go directly to the Kurds. And we have been providing support to the Syrian Kurds and the Kurdish Arab forces in Syria, and I think that should continue. I also think there's that 60-mile or 70-mile space between the Euphrates that stretches west of the Euphrates, where so much of these foreign fighters and weapons are flowing. We've been trying to get the Turks to close that. The Turks aren't willing to close that. We should let the Syrians close that.
Mm-hmm. We're going to come back and talk about
we should
some
let the Syrian
more.
Kurds close that. Excuse me.
We're going to come back and talk about some more issues. Please stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back, everyone. We're chatting with Congressman Adam Schiff. Let's come back to the United States. We spent some time elsewhere. I want to focus on some measures that are up in Congress, specifically the latest resolution pertaining to the genocide that you have introduced. Since the last time we spoke, there's a new leadership in the House. Congressman Paul Ryan has been supportive in the past of this resolution. Where do you think it's going to go?
Well, it's helpful having a speaker who has been supportive in the past. That I think was not the case with Speaker Boehner. So we have a new opportunity in the House. And I hope this being the last year of the Obama presidency, that we can get the president to fall through on his campaign commitment. This is his last best opportunity. So I intend to do everything I can to put pressure in both venues, in the Congress, in the White House. I still think that given the forces arrayed against us in the Congress, probably our best opportunity is to get the president to make the recognition, and then I think congressional recognition would swiftly follow. But we have an opening. We have a new speaker. We should test that. We should push as hard as we can and see if we can get this speaker to move forward. That would be a incredibly important decision for this new speaker, and we ought to use every bit of leverage we can to get him to make the right decision.
Mm-hmm. It's presidential campaign season. How should the Armenian constituency react to any candidate's pledge that they will recognize the genocide, since basically our community has been burnt a couple of times?
With enormous skepticism. And, I might go so far as to say that any candidate's pledge on this subject should probably be a non-factor. I mean, if you have a candidate who's out there who says that they're not going to recognize the genocide, that's worth weighing. But we've had now successive presidents who have said the right thing or intimated they were going to do the right thing and then not. And so, frankly, I would be very skeptical of any promise on this subject. And that may mean that the community will need to look at other issues as the decisive factors in how they vote, knowing that they can't rely on what a candidate for president says about what they'll do on the genocide. That's a sad truth, but that's been the experience historically, and I don't know that I could, in good conscience, tell the community they can rely on a commitment from any candidate on that subject.
By the same token, let's look at last April 24th. It was the centennial Pope reiterating the Vatican stance, Austria recognizing, and all of these countries coming to recognize. Yet the White House last year did something unique, which was 2 days before April 24th, basically announced that the president was not going to recognize. So it is his last chance. What should we expect? And if he does, what is that worth?
Well, I guess it's easier to answer the latter question first. If he does, what is it worth? I think it's worth a lot. Even if it's in the 8th year of the presidency, even if it's a president who's not running for re-election, nonetheless, to have a president recognize the genocide would be big. And I also think, one of the things that the president, I think, is proud of in his administration is certain things that he has pushed have now become so established that neither party is questioning them going into the next administration. They will just carry on. This could be part of that legacy. If this president recognizes the genocide, the president and the country will see that the world doesn't fall apart. In fact, that much like when the Pope did, there's actually a lot of respect that's garnered by having the courage to speak truthfully about this. And then I think every year thereafter it becomes a very bipartisan consensus. So I think it would be very significant if the president does. What should we expect? Well, I don't know. I'm going to be doing everything I can to make this happen. Certainly if you look at the past as prologue, it's good reason to have low expectations. But I do think, and I know I've been saying this for a long time, that this is a president who is uncomfortable with making campaign pledges that he doesn't follow through on. And I think we have a shot this year. He knows this is his last opportunity. So I am going to do all I can to urge him. I've already been working on his staff to make this happen. In order to do this, this president, probably like any other, will have to stare down their National Security Council. Because the National Security Council, by and large, their portfolio is thinking about, okay, what has the possibility of harming us? They don't look at the moral imperative. That's probably not their the dominant part of their portfolio. They're certainly concerned about that, and and they all want to act in a moral fashion, I know, but I think every president that has faced this has had to stare down their national security bureaucracy and say, I'm doing this. Only Reagan has done it, and I hope that this president will as well.
Yeah. We'll come back and talk about some more, including your race for Congress. Stay with us. Welcome back, everyone. We're continuing our conversation with Congressman Adam Schiff, who represents the 28th Congressional District here in California. We were talking about the White House and the president's recognition of the genocide. There is this issue which has come to the fore recently about the United States' role during the genocide. You have certainly advocated on behalf of the orphan rug and the whole issue of Near East relief. By not recognizing the genocide or calling it what it is, isn't the White House essentially doing a disservice to the United States and its own history?
I think so, certainly. And it's deeply ironic that the country that probably more than any other in the Western world demonstrated interest, concern, leadership, humanitarian commitment was the United States. That Near East Relief Fund raised money from all over the world in unprecedented amounts. It became a cause here in the United States. That's a really proud record of compassion. And so it's deeply ironic, and I think horribly regretful that the country that led the effort at the time to call attention to genocide now should shirk its responsibility and hide in the shadows. Other European countries have come forward, many of whom probably did little or nothing during the actual genocide to recognize it now. And I think it's all the more disappointing, at a minimum, that the U.S. has taken the position that it has. Devastating, really.
By the same token, why isn't this in history books? Why didn't I get it in public school or in college? Why aren't people still getting it? I mean, this is an incredible humanitarian effort which transcends being Armenian or any other issue.
Well, that's changing. You know, I think for students in California, that has probably changed already, thanks to a legislature that has been very attentive on this issue and wanted to make sure that our students are well educated. There are efforts in other legislatures around the country to make sure that their schools also reflect history. But we've also had fights over the years, as you well remember and know, with Turkey trying to endow chairs at UCLA and Berkeley and other places to basically teach their revised version of history. So, you know, we've had to confront that lobby at the state, local, school board, as well as national level. But you're absolutely right. This is an unequivocal fact of history, a very significant and very dark chapter of history, and one that all Americans ought to know about.
Let's come back to your campaign. You're running for Congress again. How has the district changed since 2010, when the borders were redrawn and you came to Little Armenia?
You know, it's changed quite substantially. The district used to go from, you know, the westernmost was Burbank all the way out to Temple City. In the redistricting done by the Independent Commission, they kept Burbank, Glendale, and part of Pasadena in the district, as well as the foothills, but also expanded the district to include Hollywood and West Hollywood, Silver Lake and Los Feliz, which I used to represent before the prior redistricting. Places like Echo Park and Atwater Village. So it's a wonderful, interesting, different dynamic. Interestingly, the Armenian community, I think, is larger. I lost some of the Armenian community in the Pasadena area, but gained, of course, Hollywood. And probably the only major Armenian population center in our region that I don't have is North Hollywood and some of the Valley. But the other demographic changes are we have a still substantial Asian population, but a different Asian population. In the old configuration of the district, which included Alhambra, San Gabriel, Temple City, Monterey Park, it was overwhelmingly Chinese. And in the new district, it is a smaller Chinese community, a larger Korean community, Filipino community, Japanese community, Thai community. It's frankly a much more diverse Asian community. The Latino population has stayed about the same, and then you have really different kind of local complexion of the district as well. Part of the district in the East Hollywood area is now a promise zone, which means an area that the administration has designated because it has so much need in terms of economic and housing and educational infrastructure. So you have some areas that are very poor, where the schools have a very high percentage of students that have free or subsidized meals. And then you have obviously some very wealthy areas, La Cañada and some of the foothills, the Hollywood Hills, West Hollywood. So it's an interesting, diverse district.
So is the campaign going to be interesting?
I don't know. They're always interesting, and we're doing our best to be out there in the community as much as we can and touch every part of the district. I've always thought that the best campaign is doing a good job, so I try to keep my focus on doing a good job. But I think the campaign generally, not just my own, is going to be totally fascinating. The presidential field has still yet to settle. That's a wild race. We have several races locally that are also hotly contested. So it'll be an exciting year, no doubt about it.
Very good. Any final words before we wrap?
No, I appreciate the great job you do, and this has been a wonderful discussion. The overriding issue for me, I think of paramount concern to the Armenian community, is the jeopardy that Armenians face in Syria. And I just want to say I'm doing everything I can humanly possible to assist that population, both in terms of trying to bring an end to the conflict, trying to make sure that assistance gets to people, gets the Armenian community in Syria, in Iraq. Been working very closely with Harut Sassounian, who's been fabulous on this, as well as to make sure that Armenia, which has taken in a lot of refugees, gets help from the United States, from the UN. Armenia is really doing something quite remarkable that other countries taking refugees have not, which is it's giving citizenship to people who are there. And so they're not, like in many other places, forced to live in large refugee camps and become a permanent sort of second class. So that's enormously important, and I understand the centrality of that issue, and continue to invite any community recommendations, because I want to do everything humanly possible to help that community.
Thank you, Congressman Schiff, and good luck on your campaign.
Great talking.
On the issue of Syria, there will be a telethon on February 21st on this channel. The Syrian Armenian Relief Fund will be hosting a telethon to support the Syrian Armenian brothers and sisters who are living in war and raise much needed funds for their relief issues. And on the election front, please register and vote if you haven't. June 7th is the primary, I believe, in California, and make sure to get out the vote. Thank you, Congressman Schiff.
Thank you, Ara.
And we'll have you back again soon.
Look forward to it.
And thank you all for watching. Have a good night.